G'day, and welcome to Pushing 50. My name's Ben. Today, we're going to be talking about part 4 of the aviation segment of the show, and it's all about push-on-itis. Now, if you haven't heard that term before, it's commonly used about, well, many aspects of our life. It's about going a little bit further than you should, and you commit yourself to actually doing something that it would have been better off um, being abandoned. So, to set the stage, on one particular Saturday morning, I flew up to a friend's farm just north of Tamworth in a little township called Manila, landed at his farm, which is around 5 miles north of the Manila township, just north of Tamworth, and I went paragliding. Um, was avid paraglider back in the day. It was good. It was fun, and I decided to fly up there with my paraglider in the front seat of the Tiger Moth, land at my friend's farm. Took a few people flying when I was up there, and that was basically the weekend and the Monday, maybe the Tuesday. I then planned my trek home, and unfortunately, weather had set in. We've between Cessnock and Tamworth, we have the Liverpool Ranges, which is a mountain range that stretches from almost the coast, just just west or northwest of Williamtown, RAF base, and it stretches all the way up to Muswellbrook, and then turns right and goes up towards Scone. So there's this massive mountain range. At Scone, it turns left again and goes all the way out to the Greater West, hundreds of kilometres. So there's this mountain range, and a funny thing happens with weather, especially when it's coming up from the south. The southerly winds push the moist air from the seaside up the mountain range. It forms clouds. It rains on Scone and on the windward side of the mountain, and then dissipates over the top of the mountain range and further along Tamworth and Manila, you're going to have crystal clear skies. So I'm sitting in my bedroom at Manila at Godfrey's farm, G's farm, and quite frankly, I didn't see a way through. So I decided to stay an extra day. Spent time paragliding and basically keeping to myself in my room um, for 3 to 4 days. So 3 or 4 days later, I'm still sitting there trying to figure out how I can get through. Now, there is a little area at Murrurundi called the Gap, and it's 2,300 feet above sea level is the lowest point of the Gap, and the mountains go up either side. So uh, that's the point to get through, especially with a low cloud base on the southern side of the mountain range. I'm coming from the north. Uh, Number of days went past. So I think I actually stayed with the intention of leaving for 4 days straight. So the fifth day rocks around and it's early in the morning. I'm thinking, okay, well, there is still some weather, but it doesn't look as bad as it was for the past week almost. And I need to get home. I mean, I've got my wife, my child at home, and that's my first mistake. I need to get home. Uh, you need to be able to prepare. I'm not instrument flight rated. I'm in a 1940s Tiger Moth, and I'm doing a navigation of some, well, 1.5 hours roughly. Well, actually, no, it's longer than that. It's just over 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes, which in a car takes around 5 hours. So I'm going to leave this morning. So I fire up the aircraft. I take off from G's farm and point myself over the top of Mount Bora, which is a mountain range, which is just to the north of Manila and further north of Tamworth. I then aim to go to the west of Lake Keepit. I'm at about 3,500 feet, and I'm over Lake Keepit at that stage. Lake Keepit has a runway and an airstrip, which is very well known for glider flights. And a voice comes on the radio. Oh, Tiger Moth, do you want to have a cup of coffee? Remember it very well. Now I lost my father 14 years ago to around this time. Uh, my father's glider was bought by a syndicate, which was based at Lake Keepit. So I was accepting of the invitation for a cup of coffee, even though I'd only took off 15 minutes before. This voice came onto the radio. So 3,500 feet, I pulled the power back. I glided down and landed at Lake Keepit and had a cup of coffee. And it just so happens that one of the syndicate owners was at Lake Keepit of Zulu Alpha Bravo, or ZAB, and I was able to go and have a look at my father's glider, which he had gone solo in, which I mentioned in one of the previous episodes. So that was extremely personal experience, and obviously it affected me. I was very happy to see Zab, uh, a Duo Discus XL model, long cockpit. Dad was 6'4.5", 6'5", 20-meter wingspan, etc. So I actually got to eyeball my father's glider, which was very, how can I put this, heart-wrenching to a certain degree. Um, However, very satisfying as well. So the coffee had been done. I didn't check the weather. I was going to make it home. I'm pretty sure the weather was going to be okay. There was a few questions about what sort of weather was going to be on the other side of the Liverpool Ranges around the Murrurundi Gap. But let's go. So started the plane, self-start, jump back in the plane, take off, and head towards the Murrurundi Gap. I'm at about 3,000 feet, so the gap is 2,300 feet roughly. So I'm going to aim for the gap and then sail past. Scone will be on the right. Continue down that section of the Hunter Valley with mountains to the left, mountains to the right, and Muswellbrook in front of me. I get to the gap. It's been nice and sunny. It's quite warm. I'm not complaining. It's a nice day. However, on the other side of the Liverpool Ranges, I can see a cloud mass which is being pushed against the Liverpool Ranges from the south with a southerly change. Um, Southerly change moved through quite some days ago. That's why I was stuck in Manila, but it was still persistent moisture from the south up against the Liverpool Ranges. So as I approached the Murrurundi Gap from the north, heading south back to Cessnock and via Muswellbrook, I could see that the weather was decidedly worse than what I thought it was going to be. At that point in time, I should have made a conscious decision to turn around and go back to where I came from. There was a number of runways behind me. I could have waited. However, I've already waited 4 days, 4.5 days. So it was push-on-itis. It was a time where I'd made a plan. I'm going to stick to my plan, and it's written in stone. When in actual fact, I probably should have erred on the side of caution and spent another day or two wherever I'd come from. In this case, just north of Manila, Tamworth. So I continued on, and I went through the gap at 3,000 ASL above sea level, which gave me about 700 feet of clearance through that narrow little uh, gap in the mountain range. So I've got a mountain range to my right, mountain range to my left, and I've got Murrurundi right in front of me, and then Scone off to the right a little bit further down the road. So I've gone through the gap. I've then descended down to maintain clearance from the lower level of the cloud. That continued to basically get lower and lower as I went through that gap. I got to a point where I was about 700 feet above ground level after the mountain range, and Scone is off to the right. I'm underneath the cloud. I'm not doing any instrument flight. I'm not trained in instrument flight, so VFR must stay built in a visual flight rules. So I must be able to see where I'm going, and I must be able to see at least 5 kilometres, and I must stay clear of cloud. So I'm underneath the cloud, and I'm at about 700 feet above ground level. It starts to rain. I've got Scone Airport on my right to the west as I head south down this funnel of the valley. Mountains to the left, Muswellbrook in front of me, which is my target. So once I get to Muswellbrook, I can turn left and go down the Hunter Valley towards Cessnock, which from where I was, I couldn't actually see it because there was low cloud and there was rain, and the rain started to get quite heavy. Um, at this stage, I've got now a mountain range behind me, which is disappearing into cloud that's pushing up against it and rain behind me. I can just see Scone Airport to the right, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I'll just continue. I know the road beneath me because that's the road that goes from Muswellbrook out to Murrurundi and up the mountainside. It didn't look too bad at Muswellbrook, so I continued on my southerly direction, following the road at what a height is now, about 500 foot above ground level. Now, that's low level flying, so need to have my wits about me. Everything is switched on, it's all working, but I've been making bad decisions for about the last 30-35 minutes. Push-on-itis. I continued on, and as I got halfway between Scone and Muswellbrook, Muswellbrook had a very large cloud and a lot of rain coming down to the point where I couldn't see past Muswellbrook, and it was quite disconcerting. I didn't know, should I turn back to Scone and land at Scone Airport? Probably should have, but push-on-itis. I can make it. I can make it. I can make it. I can get there. I've been in the air for about an hour at this stage, and I'm halfway home. To the left, I can see the big mountain, which is just towards the northeast of Muswellbrook, and I decided to turn left to avoid that rain squall that was happening over Muswellbrook. So I turned eastward towards the coast before the mountain, which is just to the east of Muswellbrook. Now, This is stress due to weather, and it's also stupid decision making. However, I turned left, east, and proceeded to fly through controlled airspace. The only reason I did that is due to stress due to weather and a series of stupid decisions all the way along. So I managed to fly along and over that ridge line. Um, I then found myself following a train track next to mines. And I thought, well, they're not going to blow up the train tracks, so I should be safe from any blasting that's getting done. And I did what we call IFR. I follow railroads and continued eastbound until, lo and behold, the skies opened up. It became blue skies. There was no more rain, and I was able to climb back up to a sensible altitude, which was in the vicinity of 2,000 to 2,500 feet, and head back to Cessnock. Arrived at Cessnock, no event. Beautiful blue skies, um, plains dry, nice warm weather. It's like nothing had ever happened. Landed on runway 35 with a nice light northerly blowing, which is not what we experienced back further up the valley. So I landed, shutdown after shutdown, always sort of think about the flight, especially when it's a navigational flight where you're going from point A to point B. Obviously log the times and and fill in the maintenance release. But at that stage, there was a lot of reflection in regards to the stupid mistakes and the stupid decisions that I'd made, which I term as push-on-itis. 4 days wanting to leave Manila and fly out and fly home was building pressure. The flight through the rain squalls, the continuing past Scone. I should have turned around before the Murrurundi Gap. I should have landed at Scone Airport. I should have turned around before going over the mountains at Muswellbrook. And I shouldn't have followed a railway um, after going over the mountains to the east of Muswellbrook, northeast. So a series of ultra dumb decisions ended up okay, but that's probably one of the most scary and prolonged activity I've done with aviation, and very scary, especially as the rain's pelting on the windscreen. You then start to lose sight of Scone Airport, which is off to the right. And then you fly over a mountain only to find a railway, which I figured was going east, and the compass said so. Um, Lots of dumb decisions, which turned out okay. However, if I was to do it again, and if I had a passenger on board, if I had my son on board, for example, there's no way I'd do that. No way in the world. And in hindsight, that's probably one of the dumbest things I've done in aviation. So thank you for listening. If you've managed to listen this far, our next segment will be going from aviation. There are other stories about aviation, but we'll go through them at a much later date about flying from Perth to Sydney or Cessnock, from the west coast of Australia to the east coast of Australia in a 1940s biplane. We'll do that later. The next particular story we're going to go through is it's been requested from several people, Luke, Kelly, and a few others, Prolassus and Matt. we'll be going through the Pajero and how I nearly killed myself with the Pajero, Mitsubishi Pajero. So hope you've enjoyed today's or tonight's episode, depending on when you listen and look. And thank you. And thank you for watching Pushing 50. Ciao for now.